El mundo puede detenerse. Tus sueños no. Elige bien. Elige UPB.
Good morning to all the audience in Colombia and Latin America. Good afternoon to our audience in Germany and Europe. I'm Sabina Cárdenas, Professor and Research Associate at the Pontificia Universidad Javeriana, Cali. Today, I will be guiding the event as moderator. Welcome to HEPCOPA Lecture Series, a project organized by the Universidad Pontificia Bolivariana, Bucaramanga, and the University of Potsdam as part of the Higher Education Potsdam-Colombia Partnership. The HEPCOPA project is a bilateral initiative developed jointly by Colombia and Germany in which the University of Potsdam, Universidad de Caldas, Pontificia Universidad Javeriana Cali, the Colombian Universities Association, ASCUN, and Universidad Pontificia Bolivariana Bucaramanga have worked together since 2018 to build up capacities in the areas of quality, digitalization, and management in higher education. Today, we are going to talk about designing the pluriverse, a trend that is closely related to societal transformation. Before the start of the lecture, I want to invite you to the virtual course, Societal Transformation Processes. The HEPCOPA lecture series will give a participation certificate to the audience that completes at least 80% of the activities that will be posted on the platform. If you want to complete your registration in the course, please click on the link that is fixed on the top of the YouTube chat. Now we will be starting with the talk, so let me introduce you to our speakers for the lecture. Professor Miriel Milicevic and Professor Andrés Burbano. Miriel Milicevic is a professor at the Department of Design at the University of Applied Sciences Potsdam, an artist and interaction designer. She focuses her work on the connections between people and their natural, social, and technical environments. This research is mostly participatory in nature and manifests itself in practical utopian models, processes, and narratives. They are often realized in collaboration with other artists, scientists, and practitioners. Andrés Burbano is a scholar at media and media artist, currently an associate professor in the Department of Design at Universidad de los Andes in Bogotá, Colombia. Burbano holds a PhD in media arts and technology from the University of California and is a visiting professor at the Danube University in Krems, Austria. This semester, he is a visiting scholar at the University of Applied Sciences Potsdam, Germany. Professor Milicevic, Professor Burbano, welcome to HEPCOPA Lecture Series. You have the floor since of this moment.
Hello.
Hello, Sabina. Thank you very much for the introduction. So we prepare like roughly an hour of presentation, so we want to start right away. I will start screen sharing.
Perfect. And then would be Professor Milicevic.
Yes, exactly. So let me check if things are okay. Okay, so good morning, people in Colombia. Good afternoon, people in Germany. Our presentation today, it's entitled Design for the Pluriverse, and it's part of the Societal Transformation Processes lecture series. We are presenting together with Professor Miguel Milicevic from the Fachhochschule Potsdam, and myself, Andres Borbano, from Universidad de los Andes in Bogota, Colombia. So the main concept of the talk is the pluriverse, like a concept that comes from social sciences, but is having a strong impact in design, that which is our common field with Muriel. So the pluriverse refers to a world that accepts that there are many versions of the world. The need for coexistent principles among these worlds is what ignited the necessity of thinking about the pluriverse. So some of those coexistence principles are, for instance, plurality, respect, care, dialogue, and solidarity. So today we will have two parts of the presentation. One part is, the first part is my previous work at Universidad de los Andes at the design department, also working in a transdisciplinary framework with other colleagues at the university. You will see the projects. And the second part is our current work at the Fachhochschule Potsdam here in Germany, also at the design department. And this is work together with Muriel Milicevic and also a Brazilian scholar, Thiago Oliveira. So part one, it's called City and Virus. And we will try to connect all the time concepts of plurality, respect, care, dialogue, and solidarity along the presentation. So the situation is the following. At the beginning of 2010, as soon as the pandemic was evident in Colombia, having a strong impact in our daily life in cities, like lockdowns and things like that, I decided to change the curriculum of every class I was teaching. For instance, related to data processing, visualization, storytelling, machine learning techniques, and apply everything to make a contribution to the pandemic. So we started doing data visualization projects, cartographies, trying to represent transportation in order to make a contribution in that regard. So quickly, as soon as we started engaging with those topics, we identified the need of two things at the beginning: graphics for simulations that other colleagues at the university were working on, and the development of maps to understand some of the dynamics of the city better. So this is an example, for instance, the dynamics of the COVID at the beginning in Colombia based on simulations. We started to work with colleagues in the university, scientists working in simulations and trying to understand and produce easier to understand, better, visually constructed visual representations of such simulations. And a second part of the process was the development of cartographic maps of the city, especially trying to depict transportation dynamics. What we are looking at now are like two maps of Bogota, divided, identifying the different areas of Bogota, for instance, in the according to what is called in Colombia estratos, like economic capacity of different parts of the city, and also the impact on the different stations of the transportation system, the bus rapid transit called Transmilenio in Bogota. So we identified that was a very important need. The university sent information about the dynamics of transportation to the mayor of Bogota, for instance, and they made a lot of recommendations, and our maps were part of that, like understanding which stations in particular eventually were more in, people there were more in danger of getting infected or something like that at a time, because the occupancy was very high. So we started to work with several tools, and the Carto, which is a software that is made in the States, they gave us a scholarship to use their platform for free with all the capabilities. So we were able, for instance, to depict the dynamics of transportation in time, right? To see like the evolution of the occupancy of the different stations in Bogota. This was done with, with my students, because all of them were very engaged and producing amazing work with super good quality. After transportation, we also collaborated with some medical doctors to have maps of Bogota that depict, for instance, the locations of hospitals and schools. And this is probably the best map that we have done. The blue dots represent the hospitals, and the size represent the number of beds available to, let's say, receive COVID patients. And the yellow and orange dots represent schools and universities, and trying to find this correlation between the occupancy of the buildings in educational systems, and also the correlation with the hospitals. This was an educational process as well, learning to work with data. It's like real data, it's not real time. And try to make a difference, working with the people who work in logistics especially. But the time came to try to specialize ourselves in one particular topic, and we identified that the disinformation and misinformation topics were understudied in our context. And we started to see like a trend worldwide, from the UNESCO, European Union, the states, and also the authorities in Colombia identified disinformation and misinformation as one of the key problems of the pandemic. So we started to read consistently, like essays, scientific papers about the COVID spread, but also like the psychological reasons for people to share pieces of this information, which is very interesting. So finally, we were able to join a team that is called COLEV, that is led by Professor Catalina Gonzalez. She's a medical doctor. She was the head of the epidemiology master's program there. And she led we applied for grant, an international grant in Canada, IDRC, and we were able to get the funding. And it's amazing because our team from the design department is in charge of one of the objectives of this large research project. And it's, the study of disinformation and misinformation. And we are making a difference also because we are applying design methodologies like co-design, and also focusing on the problems of narrative and storytelling. So these are some examples of the things that we have done those days in Bogota. Like the general response of our university was overwhelming. The point that the university created a portal, a web portal with a lot of information. For instance, with this visualizer of cases in Colombia, we also collaborated with the design department. But there are like many news, 3-4 times a week with different kind of analysis, contributions to understand the problem of COVID in Bogota, the impact, and also kind of trying to help other initiatives that the university had, for instance, adapting the labs to run free tests for COVID, and more recently, helping with the vaccination processes. This is, for instance, one of the visualizations that we did at the beginning of the pandemic. For instance, working with information of the fact checkers in Bogota and trying to understand the problem in time. This visualization is a 1 year of disinformation in Colombia, and we are trying to understand what are the difference between the different pieces, where the original information comes from, and how they depict, for instance, the characters that the pieces of disinformation choose, to put in their words some false claims about the pandemic. So this has been a super revealing process, in my opinion. And more recently, we're working in pieces like this, like are more based in storytelling, trying to understand, for instance, why these ideas of the antenna and the chip by Bill Gates and so on have been so successful in spreading disinformation globally and also in our country. And with this, we try to work with different processes of visualization, trying to understand the dynamics behind the spread of disinformation, and we are also using theory of narrative to explain what is happening. So I really hope you later on can take a look to this. And the second part, I'm going to be quicker now, is a second portal that we're participating on that refers to a problem that started 1 year after the pandemic and the lockdowns, what was the massive social crisis and the big demonstrations that the country experienced early this year. So the university, especially Professor Silvia Restrepo, who is the head of research and creation at the university, decided to invite all the professors from the university to create a web portal to collect information about possible solutions, potential solutions, or to increase the quality of the discussion about these topics. And we, the Department of Design, were called to be the curators of the website, which is recognition of the work we've done in the past, but also a challenge, to really deliver some kind of important input in this case. So we decided to work towards 6 points that the Organization of Universities in Colombia did, that is focus on 6 aspects: rule of law, fiscal pact, right to health, strengthening democracy, peace agreement implementation, and education rights. And we started to collect several proposals from different professors from the university, students, invited guests to make contributions, help to analyze, help to understand, criticize, let's say, what was happening at the time in the country, and from the academia, right, think in potential solutions. This has been an amazingly moving process because really a lot of people participated. And I can say here that the participation of young students has been overwhelming. It's really interesting and moving and positive to see how the new generations are committed to think in possible solutions for the problems that we experiment as a society in Colombia. Today, for instance, one of the pieces that was published there, I know that recently or today won one of the most important journalism prizes in Bogota. This map that was developed also with one collaboration of one team in the UK, forensic architecture, about the confrontations of the in the demonstrations between participants of the demonstrations and the public forces. Also, I've been trying to explain more and more the quality of the output that the students did, like creating these spaces like el entendedero, which means, the place where you hang, your clothes, like tendedero, but also, the idea of entender something, to understand something. And this has been amazing. And the most interesting part, I think, is to see the mix of people, leaders of some particular universities, some of the most important experts in economics, as well as artists, designers, trying to think and combine the information of these heavy problems we experiment. And now we're in the process of digesting and organizing the information to present potentially let's say a short version of the topics discussed to presidential candidates in the early 2022. So this is what I have prepared for you today. I'm just gonna show you quickly the website. It's Crisis Social in Colombia 2021. The different topics that we are engaging, and the collection of articles, papers, open classes that are related to these manifestations that our country had and probably will still have for a while, because the problems we cross are not simple. And the pandemic has had a very strong impact, not only in health, but also in the economics and other sides of the society. So with this, this is one of the students' projects. This is for some of the presidential candidates as well at the time. Some artists. I'm gonna just close and say that, after working in these projects, or while working in these projects, I was able to get in contact with Muriel, and she invited us to participate in a new project here in Potsdam. And I recently, 2 months ago, I moved here to work with her in the projects that she's gonna tell you about, like new classes trying to articulate landscapes and reflections between Germany and Colombia. I mean, and South America in general. Muriel, it's your turn.
Okay. Hello, I'm Muriel Milicevic. Thank you, Sabina, and for the kind introduction. I'm also going to share the screen, or try at least. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to talk about is a class called Relational Landscapes that I devised together with Andres and also Tiago, who's a anthropologist from Brazil. He's currently also in Berlin researching at the Ethnology Museum and the Botanical Gardens here. And together we wanted to look at landscapes as a boundary object, because we are kind of living in our worlds, but often forgetting that we are related to many other worlds at the same time. And what I'm going to show you is just the class as it's currently unfolding, because we started end of October, so there are no results yet I can share. However, we are sharing with you on a kind of surface bird eye view what we are going through in this class together. And maybe later, if you have questions, we can go into more depth in one point or the other. But just to give you an idea of this landscapes, we're navigating ourselves at the same time as we are doing it together with the students. So you see on the world map the area of Brandenburg and Berlin and South America, and there are many hidden connections and in unexpected ways. And we're focusing more on the Amazon and the Andes, but generally that area. And one thing, of course, you think of what is traveling between these networks is stuff in the first place, plants, knowledge, people also, animals, objects. And we divided the classes into these kind of topics, like everything that travels the networks. However, we also look at different categories, like we are going to show you in a moment. If you look at historic expeditions, and something you'll be all familiar with is the Columbian Exchange. That was the first time stuff went back and forth between the places. And one of the iconic objects or plants was the potato. And many people in Germany, but also Europe, forget that potato is not a German thing, even though it's become so much part of our food culture. But for instance, even in the 18th century, the king or emperor of Prussia, Frederick II, he went around to the farms and told people to plant the potato to stop starvation and famine. And it's become part of our landscape. So this is one example of how landscapes here have changed, because there had been people traveling there and things came here from South America in this case. And not only things, but also people have been traveling. And like Alexander von Humboldt is one of the most famous one, being from Berlin, but also another one of many people who went on expedition was Georg von Langsdorff. He went actually for the Russian crown to South America. and more to Brazil, while Alexander von Humboldt went more to the Spanish-speaking regions. He wasn't as successful. That's why maybe he didn't become as famous. And one guy who became famous, and Andres can tell you all about him, is Hercule Florence, an artist at the time from Monaco, who not only painted the environment and the animals and plants, but he also started recording the sounds of birds in notation systems and invented photography in order to multiply his recording. So things had been happening. You know, some people get famous for something, but there are many other people behind these processes. And many inventions also came from these kind of encounters, and also to indicate again how artists were also part of that and new inventions came about. However, the collection of things and transporting it here also meant that things became objectified and measured and named by Western systems, and often forgetting the knowledge and the people who originally invented and came up with things like curare, like rubber, how to use it. And it happened back then, it still happens today, and something that's called biopiracy, not only taking plants or genetic information, but also the knowledge about things and how it can be used. It's one big topic you can look into and see how these things that happen there also, again, are traveling here and influencing our industries and our medical systems, which is called also, so everything that travels the networks, like these things also have a black box behind. Things have technologies behind them, people who invented those technologies, who promoted them. One example that Thiago gave is the case of the Wardian case. There was this guy from the UK called Nathaniel Ward. He invented this case where plants could be traveling very far distances for a very long time, being still alive when they arrive. And this caused a whole big, travel system of plants around the world, multiplying them in other places, leading to things like botanical gardens, which again were a big invention of technology, how to create these spaces where that you can cool or heat according to what you need to grow those plants. And it happened in the UK and the Kew Gardens, but also here in Berlin. And we're going to visit this place with the students next week. And from those gardens, many plants made it into our landscapes again, which could be outdoor, but also indoor. And our living rooms became kind of little South American landscapes with these kind of plants that you can find everywhere now. And again, fueling an industry of plant production. If you're more interested in this kind of also engineering of landscapes, I think it's very interesting, this book from Fabien Locher and Jean-Baptiste Frézeau. They look at times from the 15th century to the 20th, how people then chopped down trees in other places because they thought they have to enhance the local climate to grow certain plants for industrial use. And in a way, calling that civilized to change the local climate, but often with not such good consequences. There's also this video which explains, again, concepts from the book. So these are more like some hints for you. So with the students, we're trying to find out different things and points where we can connect the dots. And they're not linear, like I'm showing you now. You know, they're going back and forth. One obvious story could be, for instance, the soy that is growing in South America. Forests are chopped down there to grow a lot of soy, which again travels especially to Germany. And this is a map of Brandenburg. And you can see where in Brandenburg we have animal farms. It's from 2013, but I think it's still relevant. So you see where there's cattle, pigs, chicken, ducks, and turkeys. And we can only have this large amounts of animals because we can feed them with food from other places, which are high in protein. And from that, it means also that we are changing the landscape here again, not only by chopping the trees in South America, but also here having all these animals means we have a lot of feces from them, which goes into the landscape, which again is an excess of nitrogen, one of the planetary boundaries, which are already, we're already in the red zone of that. It goes into the water, goes into the oceans. We have a biodiversity loss in the landscape because of the nitrogen. It's affecting the climate and the water, the groundwater. So it's one way to show that things happen here and there, which don't have good effects in this case. Another one is, you also might be familiar with the mining of rare earths to go forward with our energy transition so we can have batteries. Right now, there's a huge gigafactory next to Berlin being built to make those kind of batteries and have our cars equipped with them. And again, not only the landscape in South America has changed for that, but also but those rare earths also come from Canada and other places. But here we need a lot of water to create those batteries, and Brandenburg doesn't have much water. It's very sandy. So it's, again, a change in landscapes for these reasons. So this is just to give you some ideas of these kind of connections that we're looking at through time, through space, and people, non-humans, other beings. And one thing that is also interesting currently, why people from Europe look a lot to South America and other places, is to learn how could we actually have a more communal and respectful way to live with nature. And concepts of when revere and rights of nature are very much debated in certain circles. How can we, cohabitation was a big topic, not only in this exhibition, but also other events in Berlin. How can we live with other non-human species together in a more respectful way? And this is just a small overview of things that we're looking at in the class, but also as examples. So in the class, we are thinking, okay, so there are these stories, we have to research them, but how to tell and visualize these relationships and narratives. And we're just about to start developing them. And one thing we're going to have on December 2nd is a little symposium in the evening of 5 to 7:30 p.m. So convenient for people in South America as well. And where we have guests to talk about their projects and case studies and examples of visualizing and critiques of visualizing. So feel invited to that. We can share the link once we have it later on. And now we would like to invite you out there. And we don't know you, but there will be the Miro link on the YouTube channel now, and we invite you to come here and then add what you think is relevant, interesting to tell about these interconnections of landscapes between Germany and South America. And please feel free to join the link and post comments or questions or thoughts you have about that. So I will stop sharing, I guess. And give back to Sabina to manage.
Thank you, Professor Milicevic. and Professor Burbano for offering this very stimulating lectures about how these transformative initiatives are providing options to current processes. Indeed, these lectures deliver insight into multiple opportunities and guide us towards meaningfulness through plurality. Thank you, Dr. Burbano, for showing us a very impressive collaborative process that took place in the Project City and Virus and Crisis in Crisis Social in Colombia. These portals provide narratives that allow to analyze and think potential solutions for pressing issues in the country. And thank you, Professor Milicevic, for allowing us to accept many versions of the world and show those hidden connections in different types of exchanges that happen between the landscapes of Germany and Colombia. Now we will move to the questions and answer session. So all the people who are following the lecture can write their questions in the YouTube chat. We will be choosing some of them. Unfortunately, we cannot choose them all. So the floor is open for this session. Okay, so if you guys have any questions, I could read them for Dr. Milicevic or Dr. Burbano. They're asking were the universities closed during the pandemic, and were the students let me see. Okay, would you like to address the public, either of you, Mr. Burbano or Professor Burbano? Professor Milicevic, I don't see. Do you guys see any comments?
So I thought there was a question about like the online transformation, let's say, in the universities. Is that correct?
Yes, there was a question. I see here that they're asking about online courses for students, and how was it during the pandemic? Like,
Yeah. So I will start, and maybe Miguel can also add from the German perspective. What I can tell you is, at Universidad de los Andes, it was the first university that didn't allow students to go back to campus. It was done very early on because of the information, based on information on studies mainly in the States, I think. And we had like Semana Santa, like a spring break. And after that, all classes went online, 100% of the classes. Locally, the university had the infrastructure to run it. And I can say, in my case, we try to not miss even a minute of the classes. We try to do all the classes all the time. First, as a sense of responsibility to the students, that they were, wanting an education and in need of an education, and we needed to provide somehow opportunities. And this was kind of my way of, let's try to collaborate in projects instead of just going, in a linear way through our syllabus. And so that I can say in some cases, some of the best classes I have taught in my life were some of the online classes that we had the chance to have during this time. There are other things that don't work that well, but I can say that we try to do as much as we could, because also there's a sense of responsibility with the students. Mm-hmm.
And it says, was your visualization project, was that visualization project part of an online offered to students, right?
We did that with the students. The several projects of visualization we did with the students, and that everything was coordinated online, of course. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we were able to find really committed people who contributed. Like they went back home in some cases. So in some cases they stayed in Bogota, and anyway, we found a way to include many people and have some results and have the sense of participation in what was going on, let's say, in the country. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. So would Professor Milicevic would like to add something to the presentation?
No, thanks to Yakava for the comment on connecting the coffee of famous coffee chains, American ones. Yeah, what's their role in relating the landscapes together of, like, not only Germany and South America, but probably worldwide.
That's awesome. So we want to thank once again Professor Milicevic and Professor Burbano for your time and for being part of this HEPCOPA lecture series. It was a very enlightening lecture to envision solutions and see points of coexistence. Thank you for being here. Last remarks from both of you.
Thank you for having us, and thank you, Sabina, for the great moderation.
Thank you. So Professor Andres Acevedo would like to see, let's say, any last remarks, or we could.
I would say that it's very, very interesting what is happening in this lecture series. This opportunity of knowing better the academic interests in both in Germany and Colombia. We with Muriel have been learning a lot from our countries, from our perspectives, and we think it's a fruitful place to develop ideas and projects. And we hope that this is happening not just in our field, which is design arts, but also in other fields.
Thank you, Professor Burbano, for your insight. Thank you again, Professor Milicevic, and we'll see you in another opportunity.
Thank you. Bye-bye.